Hi, everyone. This is the Tech Surge Deep Tech podcast, presented by Celesta Capital. Each episode, we spotlight issues and voices at the intersection of emerging technologies, company building, and venture investment. I'm Michael Marks, founding managing partner at Celesta. Today, we are pleased to welcome Sanjay Mehrotra, President and CEO of Micron. Micron is, of course, one of the world's largest manufacturers of advanced memory and storage systems with sites around the globe and with its headquarters in Boise, Idaho. I had the pleasure of getting to know Sanjay and working closely with him during his time at SanDisk, where he was a co-founder and served as president and CEO, helping lead the company from a startup to a $14 billion valuation and a successful sale. So Sanjay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Michael, it's really great to be here. Have known you, worked with you for a couple of decades now, and excited to be here sharing our thoughts on what's happening in the world today. And before I begin, Michael, I just wanted to highlight that you know that I've been a small investor in Celesta. But today, when I'm here with you, I am actually here in my capacity as the CEO of Micron. And really, this is about Micron and our industry today. And I would just add that, of course, in the course of the discussions, there may be some forward-looking statements, and anybody listening should always understand the risk factors associated with it, which are, of course, in Micron's SEC filings, which we make from time to time.
Of course, thanks for that. And, having run a public company myself for many years, I know how tricky this can be. So hopefully we won't get into any trouble here. Okay, so look, we've known each other for a long time, and you've had a remarkable career, and this is as good a place as any to start. You're one of the people that we together know a lot of here in the Valley, of people who start with small business and found something and then eventually, wind up being famous like Jensen Huang or our other friends. Maybe you could just talk about that journey, how you started at SanDisk, and just talk us through how you got to become the CEO there and then what your journey was over to Micron and so on.
Journey at SanDisk, amazing journey over 28 years. Starting with founding of the company, 3 immigrants here in Silicon Valley, one from Israel, Eli Harari, our lead founder and a great mentor to me over my journey at SanDisk, and Jack Yuan and myself. And, starting with the idea of using imperfect memory at the time, which was flash in the labs, and converting it into essentially gold in terms of system level solutions. And this was absolutely breakthrough, extremely differentiated, addressing large markets that we didn't even know about, and taking it from digital cameras to mobile phones to solid state drives, retail products, as well as OEM products. And, becoming a world leader in flash technology. That was an amazing journey there at SanDisk, and really an amazing team as well. And, being at a startup from the very beginning, being there for 28 years, knowing everybody and kind of knowing all aspects of the business, and then coming into Micron was certainly a different experience and exciting challenge for me when I decided to join Micron, because I looked at Micron always, even when I was a competitor at SanDisk, that Micron was a national treasure. It had tremendous capabilities, and joining a large-scale company with deep-rooted culture and essentially parachuting in as the CEO, of course, you have butterflies in your stomach. But that was an exciting moment, and leading the transformation at Micron from being somewhat a laggard in technology to today becoming a clear leader in DRAM and NAND technologies and really driving vertical integration has been an exciting journey. And again, common thing here too is an amazing team here at Micron, because it had an amazing team even when I joined. And then, really focusing on leveraging its innovation capabilities and driving leadership of technology and products, and focusing on execution and focusing on building a culture of accountability. It just has been a fun journey all the way from SanDisk to Micron here today.
Well, I'm going to dig into that a little bit, but I am reminded of a story from the early SanDisk days. And for the listeners here, that pictures and videos are stored in flash memory. And I remember very early on that Kodak had an opportunity to acquire SanDisk and didn't. And that was actually the way that the camera pictures would get stored. And now, of course, they're not in business anymore. And the flash memory business turned out to be really big. So that's just kind of a cool story. So Sanjay, a little bit before we're going to talk about all hardware stuff and what's happened in the industry and all that. But tell us a little bit about your style as a CEO. You just talked about two different situations, one where you were the founder and everybody just sort of looked up to you and the company developed from small to big, and another where you just sort of parachute in. So what skills does it take to do both of those things?
I think, certainly, as I mentioned, both at SanDisk as well as at Micron, focus on team is extremely important. Having a team, surround yourself with really smart people, good people, drive collaboration together, addressing all the challenges and opportunities is critically important. And really, I've been blessed with strong teams and ability to work with strong teams, both at SanDisk as well as here at Micron. I think at Micron, we have best in class here in our industry. I would also say a focus on listening and learning, I think, is really important. When you have strong team, you better be prepared to listen to that team as well and learn from that team. And I think drive that culture across the company at all levels of the organization, encouraging people to feel free to speak up and especially raise hands when they see some issues and problems so that those can be addressed well.
And do they?
Many people do. Some people always hesitate, and it is the responsibility of the leaders to absolutely continuing to emphasize how important it is and share examples of when we benefit from team members speaking up. I would also say, innovation has been core to both SanDisk as well as at Micron, is absolutely part of the DNA. But focusing on innovation with execution, I think, and balancing the two so that ultimately you can produce strong results. And that requires attention to detail and, of course, taking some calculated risks and building a culture of accountability as well. These are some of the things that I very much focused on during my years in management and leadership at SanDisk as well as at Micron.
Well, congratulations on that. Obviously, two very successful companies. So let's get into the heart of the matter here. We talk about what's going on in the industry, and I've had the pleasure of talking with Vinod, Kosu, who and talking about the fact that venture started in the semiconductor industry, right? Everybody came out of Fairchild, National Semiconductor, and we grew up with all these hardware folks, Steve Luzo at Seagate. There's lots of them. We all know them. And in the investing industry in venture specifically, there's been a real move away from hardware over the last 30 years to e-commerce and SaaS companies. Enterprise software, has been what people have been focused on. Now, as you know, with NVIDIA being, one of the most valuable companies in the world, and Broadcom and others, and Micron working its way up this path, all of a sudden, we're the cool kids again. We've been doing this for a long time, and now everybody wants to talk about what it means. And so just some general reflections. I'm going to get into some specifics, but some general reflections on that in terms of, you've been in the hardware business your whole life, and what has that felt like to you that, people were not interested so much and all of a sudden they are?
Absolutely exciting for us. I've been in this industry in semiconductors, actually memory, for more than 4 decades now. And it is wonderful to see the recognition, the importance that semiconductors play today, across everything electronic. Semiconductors are key, and, global economies are being driven by semiconductors. National security, semiconductors play an important role. Economic growth, they play an important role. So it's really wonderful to see, the focus on semiconductors. No question that pandemic highlighted the importance of semiconductors, and across the world, across the geographies, around the globe, you see focus on semiconductors. So no question that, semiconductors are critically important. Of course, it is R&D heavy industry. It is a CapEx heavy industry. Now the applications are at levels that, in our industry in memory, which is very capital intensive and cyclical as well, but applications are really truly delivering value that has never been seen before, value that the memory is driving in the applications. And that's where I think the value that semiconductors, in our case, memory, that it's unleashing, today, particularly driven by AI, That's what is really making semiconductors truly cool. And semiconductors are not just about components. I mean, they're absolutely about systems as well, applications, and really the whole vertical integration, the whole enchilada. And that's what just makes today extremely exciting.
You have a perspective here that we don't, that I would like to hear you share a little bit about, which is your interactions with the investment community. We deal with private companies only. And I'm just curious to know the fact that semiconductors have become so important, have gotten cool again. Is there more enthusiasm from the investment community and the kinds of things that you do? This isn't a view that we have.
I mean, certainly you see, the investment community is fully recognizing the value of semiconductors. You see that in the valuation of the semiconductor companies today. You see that in the growth, the revenue growth opportunities, the profitability metrics, the innovation that semiconductors companies are bringing. Of course, that's what is resulting in the valuation of these companies. You earlier highlighted how NVIDIA has become one of the most valuable companies around the globe. So clearly, I think there is a strong recognition from the investment community on the importance of semiconductors. And I would again emphasize, not just by investment community, not just by the customer ecosystem across the globe, across the multiple semiconductor end markets, but a great recognition of the importance of semiconductors by governments around the globe on the economic security as well as national security aspects.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm just curious. So do you have more analysts who follow you, for example? That's kind of, how I'm thinking about the interest level, which wasn't so high. So I'm not talking about stock prices per se, but is there more of a following around?
I mean, certainly Micron is followed by very many analysts. I don't have the count.
Yeah, sure.
But absolutely analysts, that are sell-side analysts, but of course, very many buy-side investors as well, right? And the broad base of global investors. So no question that, our IR department remains pretty busy in terms of engaging with broad set of investors.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do. All right, let's get into the what you do and what the impacts are. And one of the things that I say frequently when I'm asked to speak, and the other podcasts we've done and stuff like that, is that AI, which everybody is talking about, and everybody talks about ChatGPT and all the software kinds of stuff. But one of the things that I think is obvious to everybody, and one of the reasons that hardware has gotten cool again, is that to use AI the way it's being used requires an entire remake of the hardware system in the world, from the devices we carry to the semiconductors that get created to storage and energy use and data centers. All this stuff is going to get redone, and there's a huge interest in it. We know how much power it takes to just run a search and so on. So you're right smack in the middle of all this stuff with memory. So why don't you tell us where you fit in the ecosystem, what the innovations are required in terms of memory, and then also how you see what you do impacting the devices we carry, for example.
So, Michael, as you mentioned earlier, that there was a time when SanDisk had started that digital film was being created, and Kodak had interest in making our digital film an exclusive for Kodak. And of course, at that time, Ali Harari, kudos to him and the team, chose not to make our film an exclusive to Kodak. Rest is history. Digital films became broadly adopted all across, and that was one of the first products that led to the success of flash memory and success of SanDisk. But when you think about it, it used to be digital films. Then it was MP3 audio players.
Right.
Then came mobile phones, then cloud. It was really one large market that got created at a time. What's happening today is that AI is going across all of these end market segments. It's not just one market opportunity, new market opportunity that's getting created. AI is driving content growth from smartphones to PCs to data center to Gen AI and AI servers, automobiles, industrial systems. And that's what is really, really exciting. This has never happened before, that you see a new growth vector going across multiple industries, driving growth. And that's what is different today about memory industry than what it has been before. And that, of course, then requires a tremendous amount of innovation. It requires broad set of product portfolio in different packaging. Packaging technology today has become really, really important, more important than ever. Packages that can address high bandwidth memory, high performance, and of course, packages that have to manage thermal aspects well so that power dissipation, etc., which is, as you pointed out, is important.
Is that R&D that you do as well on packaging
side? We absolutely
side?
do.
Okay.
World's leading R&D on the packaging side as well. So I'm just trying to highlight how things have changed. Markets are diverse. Products have to be, product portfolio has to be much broader than what it was in the past to address the various form factors and various interfaces, various performance and power and capacity considerations that are required going from, an EV, self-driven car, to a data center and everything in between. So from data center to the edge devices. So innovation in memory with respect to scaling, of course, you have to continue to drive that because that's what assures cost position, and that's key. But performance is becoming increasingly important. Form factors, interfaces, and packages and packaging, assembly technology, testing to make sure that the quality levels at the highest standards, you can imagine the quality level that's expected in an automobile as well as in data center when critical mission critical applications are being driven. So all of this has really seen a huge transformation, huge set of new requirements.
I presume your R&D spending is going up a lot.
Leadership in innovation is required. R&D spending absolutely is key, and R&D spending has absolutely gone up when you look at it over the years. Yet Micron actually has been extremely efficient when you look at it as a percentage of revenue, okay? Because revenue growth, of course, has been driven as well. Most important thing, Michael, here is that today it is all about data. I mean, data is driving the insights and is driving consumer experience and business productivity. Data lives in the products that Micron makes, and that data has to be accessed fast. It has to be available with low latency. It has to be available in large quantities to drive these AI applications. These AI applications, Gen AI applications, which had just started with hundreds of millions of parameters, and now they are into several trillion of parameters for large language models. These are just some examples of the kind of workloads that memory is used for and the requirements that are placed on memory. So it's all, at the end of the day, the world today is being driven by data, and that's what is driving the value of memory, because memory is what enables access to data and storage of data.
So I would just like you to explain to our listeners, a lot of our listeners will not know what high bandwidth memory is, and that's all in the news, and it's an important thing, and you just addressed it. But for the people who don't know what it is, could you give a bit of an outline of that, please?
Yeah, so high bandwidth memory means it is a high capacity memory where you can access data at very high speeds, much higher, several times higher than standard memory in terms of data. You can look at it as a much bigger pipe of data so that data can flow through it much, much faster. Another aspect that's very important in high bandwidth memory is power consumption.
Right.
And proud to say that, Micron's high bandwidth memory today is 30% lower power than any other high bandwidth memory that exists in the industry. So power consumption, just like you noted, the data centers, power consumption is critically important. I think the world knows that data centers consume so much power today. So every aspect of whether it is the GPUs trying to lower power, memory trying to lower power is critically important. So high bandwidth memory basically provides a wide pipe of data flow so that data can flow faster than just standard memories that existed before. And this requires tremendous amount of complex technology and technology with respect to the memory chip development as well, in terms of the chip design, process technology, the chip architecture, but it also requires tremendous amount of packaging complexity because it has hundreds of thousands of interconnects that are flowing through, where the data is flowing through in parallel, in between various memory chips. And that's what is absolutely key to enabling Gen AI applications today. So high bandwidth memory is a key enabler of AI applications, particularly Gen AI applications.
And so how new is it? So, I mean, is it on the market? Is this, where do we stand in the development of high bandwidth?
2023 really is the first year of broad increasing adoption of high bandwidth memory. And of course, primarily led by NVIDIA 2023. But high bandwidth memory is the fastest growing segment within the memory industry. And as you know, if you just look at revenue, it was in low single digit billions of the total industry in 2023.
Okay.
And when we look at 2025, you're looking at this at 20 billion plus of an memory industry just in high bandwidth memory.
Okay.
So this is a product which is growing. We like to say, I mean, the metric we like to use is that it's growing at a rate of more than 50% CAGR in terms of bit growth.
Oh my. Okay.
Yes. So its demand is growing higher, and it is not just in terms of bits that the demand is growing higher. Its value is substantial because it's a key enabler of AI. So high bandwidth memory is a complex memory product. It is a high cost memory product to build, but it is a high value product to our customers as well. So highly priced, more profitable part of the memory industry as well.
Well, that's a great segue to the next discussion, which is the fabs. You know, I'm interested to know, you know, a couple things. What does it cost to do a fab today? I don't know. Back when I was the chairman of SanDisk, it was $6 billion or something like that. I'm sure that number's gone up. I'd just like to explore a little bit into the cost of these things, you know, the CHIPS Act, what kind of people it takes, how this high bandwidth memory and AI is changing the industry from a logistics standpoint.
So Michael, very good question that how bandwidth memory is changing the industry. And this is an important question that we should spend just a couple of minutes here on. So I mentioned that high bandwidth memory is a highly complex memory. So important factor to understand is that today HBM3E, which is the latest high bandwidth memory that is in the market, and again that's a product where Micron absolutely leads in specifications in the industry, and we are ramping up our production with this product. This kind of product takes 3 times as many wafers to produce the same number of bits as a standard product. And again, this is related to the increased complexity of the product. So think about it. It takes 3 times more wafers to produce the same bits as a standard product in the same technology node. What this does is it's changing the dynamics, the supply-demand dynamic of the industry. It's creating a supply tightness in the industry today. And in the future, there will be HBM4 memory. And HBM4 will be more 2026 when HBM4 memory gets deployed. HBM4 memory will have even a bigger factor than 3 in terms of its comparison to the number of wafers required with a standard product. So what this is saying is that as you look ahead, the memory demand supply environment key factors will be very different from in the past. HBM is having a major impact as a tailwind in terms of supply tightness. So this is when you look at what does this all mean in the longer term, this means that you can't just meet the demand growth that exists all across the end markets in DRAM only through technology transitions. You need greenfield capacity, additional greenfield capacity. So you need new fabs.
And are these fabs very different or just more expensive or what?
No. So the fab HBM product is made leveraging the same kind of technology, such as our industry leading 1-beta technology, which is also used in other compute and mobile products. Okay. And I want to point out that the demand growth is not just about HBM or in data center. HBM goes in data center application. Demand growth is also in smartphones, right? AI-enabled smartphones need more DRAM content. And
and does that look different? I mean,
so that memory is different that goes into the smartphones. It's not HBM memory. It's a low power DRAM and high capacity DRAM that goes into smartphones. PC DRAM is different. AI-enabled PCs are growing in their penetration over the course of next few years, just like smart AI-enabled smartphones will grow. Common thing again is that, these are great examples of edge devices, not just data center driving memory growth, but edge devices like smartphone and PC is driving more memory, more content demand. This year, Galaxy S24 got introduced, Android phone that is able to give you live language translation in conversations, etc. Right? That requires AI capabilities. In China, Honor introduced phones, their Magic 6 Pro phone that has like 7 to 10 billion parameters of AI, Gen AI engine built in. And that gives you intent-based capabilities, such as your gestures or your text or your speech. And it can recognize the intent and then take actions and provide fantastic things that we would not have imagined. All this requires more memory content. Okay, so across the data center to the edge, demand for memory we project over the next several years is continue to grow at a CAGR of mid-teens. Mm-hmm. And this requires new fabs to be built. And yes, these fabs are, expensive.
How expensive?
So each of these fabs is well above in teens, billions of dollars. Of course, those investments are made over extended period of time, and we of course will ramp up production in those fabs in line with the market demand. So Micron has talked about we are building a fab in Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
And that fab right now is actually under construction. Of course, Micron is headquartered out of Boise. Right. We have had large R&D fab, world-class R&D fab for memory in Boise. Building a manufacturing fab in Boise will provide us the benefit of co-location of R&D and manufacturing, and which provides the clear benefit of accelerated time to market of new technologies into high volume production. You can imagine when R&D engineers and manufacturing engineers work side by side, it helps accelerate the yield ramp, the quality ramp, the production ramp, sure, and gives time to market advantage of leading edge technologies. So this fab in Boise, Idaho, that we are building, we have said, over the course of 10 years, it will have an investment that will be in the range of $15 to $20 billion. And of course, the shell is under construction now. It will be equipped with most advanced equipment, semiconductor equipment later. That equipment facilitization will be done based on the assessment of industry demand, sure, so that we can keep supply and demand, sure, in balance. We are also going to be building a 4-fab cluster in Syracuse, New York.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Over 20 years time frame. And that investment will be around $100 billion over 20 years in those 4 fabs. And again, will be in line, supply growth to be brought in line with the demand growth. And that fab is expected to come online first fab more like in 2028 timeframe. Next year, we expect to break ground and begin construction-related activities.
So how important is the CHIPS Act and the government involvement? And I'm sure the listeners would really like to know about that. I mean, we hear about it, but what is it like on the ground, working with the government, and how important is it, and so on?
So, Michael, very clearly, as I highlighted, given the demand growth that we expect in the industry, we needed greenfield fabs to be built.
Sure.
Today, Micron's vast majority of manufacturing is in Asia.
Sure.
And so we would have built the greenfield fabs, new fabs, to meet the future expected demand somewhere in the world, where we already have operations today, especially in these various Asian countries that Micron has fabs in.
Sure.
CHIPS Act was critical to enable us to bring that manufacturing base for leading edge memory technology here to the US. Without CHIPS Act support, we would not have been able to bring leading edge memory manufacturing here to the US. And that is because there is a 35 to 45% cost difference between US manufacturing versus the well-established manufacturing base in Asian countries, which have supported semiconductor manufacturing for well over 2 decades. So CHIPS Act support was needed. And CHIPS Act support is in 2 forms. One, it is CHIPS grants that help you upfront with construction and ongoing readiness for high volume production of leading edge technology. So it helps you, CHIPS Act helps you with grants. That's one piece of it. And second piece of it is investment tax credits. The combination of the two helps bridge the cost gap that exists with Asia. So I want to be very clear to your listeners that CHIPS Act absolutely was essential in order for semiconductor manufacturing to come back onshore here. And I want to highlight to you that today, only 2% of the world's total semiconductor memory production is here in the US.
2%.
Only 2%. Okay. And remember, way back a few decades ago, vast majority of that production used to be here in the US.
Right.
And over the last couple of decades, it all moved overseas in Asian fabs, right? With Micron's efforts, and thanks to the CHIPS Act, we will be able to change that 2% to about 10% by early 2030s.
Oh, that's a lot.
So that's really moving the needle and bringing leading edge memory manufacturing to the US. And our customers, of course, want that. They want a diversified supply chain. They do want memory here in the US, along with our continuing investments in Asia to continue to advance technologies there. So it's not like we are giving up on our manufacturing in Asia. That will absolutely continue with technology transitions there, but the greenfield capacity will be here. And of course, it's important to the governments from national security considerations and economic considerations to have resilient supply chains.
So one of the things people, ask me about, so you highlighted an important problem, which is the costs are higher here than other countries. And you just mentioned that the CHIPS Act helps to bridge those differences. Do you still expect it to be more expensive in any meaningful way, or what impact does that have?
Very good question. And as you well know, that until you get to scale, you don't get cost competitiveness, right? So there is no question that even with CHIPS Act support, in the early phases of the production ramp, the memory production cost here would still be higher than the volume production that's occurring in Asia in that time frame, because that will be on large existing fabs already, right?
So if I hear this correctly, you're saying that once those are at scale, the equivalent scale is to the Asian countries, and with the support of the CHIPS Act, it'll be globally competitive.
Once they get to the large scale, competitive scale, then yes, with the support of the CHIPS Act grants and ongoing investment tax credits.
Oh, sure.
Yes. You'll need the ongoing investment tax credits. And investment tax credits, just for the benefit of your listeners, are at 25% of the investment that will be made by the companies in all of the equipment to support this leading edge semiconductor production. So keep in mind, bulk of investment is going to be made by the semiconductor companies like Micron. Of course, a lot of R&D investment. And you had asked that what does it take to do all of this? We talked a lot about the manufacturing side, the fab side, but there is no question that you need leading edge R&D. And, one of the objectives of CHIPS Act also is to support greater research. And that requires collaboration between universities, governments, and the private entities, the corporate semiconductor companies, to continue to make sure that we are driving advanced research. Research in all areas, process technology, product development, futuristic emerging technologies, packaging technologies, all of this. And last piece, of course, that's needed is the workforce.
I was just about to go there. That was going to be my last question or my last area to explore. Let's talk about that. And before you do that, TSMC said it's hard to get, the people. I'm sure you have some of the same stuff. One of the things that I wind up in conversations because of my own background, a lot is about manufacturing jobs. And, let's bring more manufacturing jobs to the United States. But as we speak, there's 600,000 manufacturing jobs in the United States that are not filled. And that's expected to go much higher over the next few years. So how are you going to deal with that?
Absolutely right. That tremendous focus is needed on workforce development as well. And if you look at today, in support of the CHIPS Act, Biden administration has a lot of focus on working with the semiconductor companies, the community college, as well as university ecosystems to develop the workforce. Micron is heavily invested and partnering with other companies as well, because we can't do it all alone. We have to be able to scale this up. So a lot of initiatives, K through 12, driving STEM education programs, engagement with community colleges for apprenticeship programs. Micron has started bringing students from community colleges for training in semiconductor fab apprenticeship technician and operator workforce development. And of course, we have established Northeast and Northwest university ecosystems as well, bringing semiconductor curriculum and engaging more students in semiconductor workforce. We also have to, a lot of this will take few years, several years, to develop the pipeline. So we have to reach out also to the existing workforce. We are tapping into rural communities, tapping into the veterans institutions to bring more veterans into semiconductor workforce, because veterans make actually great workforce for us, because they have, of course, strong character, strong discipline, and strong technical aptitude as well that is needed. For example, we are engaged with the Veteran Institute in Syracuse University.
Oh, good.
To really bring in veterans. In US, a large percentage of our hires today are happening, bringing in veterans into the workforce. So, and by the way, it's not just running the fabs. Construction of the fabs requires tremendous amount of workforce as well. So a lot of effort that is needed, Michael, here. And we are doing our part. We are partnering with the government here as well. Government is supporting several initiatives. We are putting in money into $75 million that's going into Idaho community framework development, to support ultimately the workforce and the community that is needed for the future. In Syracuse, New York, we have a partnership with the New York state government for total 500 million green chips community development framework, where Micron will be putting 250 million over 20 years to support, again, various activities related to workforce and community development. All of this is going to be needed over time frame of several years to continue to make sure that we build the workforce of the future and build the communities that are needed for semiconductor manufacturing here in the U.S.
Well, thank you, Sanjay. This has been completely fascinating. Going back to what I said at the beginning, starting with SanDisk and, tiny little semiconductor companies, talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. It's been quite a transformation. You have an amazing job, because we just talked through all the, you have all the geopolitics and labor and technology, innovation, government. It must be a fascinating job. So I really thank you for sharing that with us. I cannot wrap this up without paying homage to a man that we both knew, Steve Appleton, who is the CEO, longtime CEO at Micron, who unfortunately didn't live to see this. He did predict it, I must say. In conversations we had 20 years ago, he thought that this was going to become one of the most important industries in the world, and it certainly has. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you so much for taking the time. This has really been fascinating.
Absolutely. Steve Appleton was just an amazing leader of the memory industry. I always say we stand here in our industry on the shoulders of giants, and he was definitely one of them. Eli Harari, another one, from SanDisk. And you're absolutely right. This is a very, very fascinating time. And I truly believe best is yet to come.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for tuning into the Tech Surge podcast from Celesta Capital. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it, subscribe, or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back every 2 weeks with more insights and discussions of all things deep tech.